A small village surrounded by wide green fields and gentle hills. There lived a farmer named Thomas. People in the village called him the farmer father, not only because he had 3 children, but because he cared for the land, the animals, and even his neighbors as a father would care for his own family. His hands were rough from years of work. His face was darkened by the sun, and his eyes were calm and kind, like someone who had learned many lessons from the earth. Thomas woke up every morning before the sun rose, while the sky was still purple and the birds were only beginning to sing. He would sit on the edge of his bed, say a quiet prayer, and thank God for another day. Then he pulled on his old boots, worn but strong, and stepped outside to greet the farm. The farm was not large, but it was alive. There were rows of wheat that moved like waves when the wind blew. There was a small orchard with apple and pear trees, and a wooden barn where cows, goats, and chickens lived. Thomas knew every corner of the land. He knew where the soil was soft and where it was stubborn. He knew which trees needed more water and which ones were strong enough to survive a dry season. But more than anything, Thomas loved his children. His oldest son, Samuel, was 16 years old. He was tall and strong, but impatient. Samuel often dreamed of leaving the village to find an easier life in the city. He did not understand why his father worked so hard every day for what seemed like so little money. The second child was Anna, 14 years old. She was quiet and thoughtful. With a love for books and learning, she helped her father on the farm. But in her heart, she dreamed of becoming a teacher one day. The youngest was little Mark. Only 8 years old, he followed his father everywhere, asking endless questions about plants, animals, and life. Mark believed his father was the wisest man in the world. Every morning, Thomas worked alongside his children. He believed that work was not a punishment, but a lesson as they planted seeds. He explained how patience was important, because seeds do not grow in one day as they fed the animals. He taught them responsibility, saying if we care for others, they will care for us in return. One year, the village faced a difficult time. The rain did not come when it should have. The soil became dry and cracked, and the crops began to suffer. Many farmers were worried. Some complained loudly while others gave up hope. Samuel was angry. "What is the point of all this work?" he said one evening at dinner. "We work from morning to night, and still the crops are dying. If we lived in the city, life would be easier." Thomas listened quietly. He did not shout or argue. Instead, he looked at his son and said, "The land is teaching us something, just as life does. Hard times show us who we are." Anna asked softly, "But father, what if the harvest fails?" Thomas smiled gently. "Then we will face it together. Fear does not make the rain fall, but faith and effort keep our hearts strong." The next day, Thomas woke his children even earlier than usual. He showed them how to dig deeper channels to save what little water they had. He repaired broken tools instead of buying new ones. He taught them how to protect young plants from the harsh sun using old cloth and leaves. Mark watched closely and tried to help. Even when his small hands became tired, "Why don't you rest?" "Father," he asked. Thomas knelt beside him and said, "A father rests when he knows his children are safe and prepared for life." Weeks passed, and although the harvest was smaller than usual, the family survived. While other farms lost everything, Thomas's careful planning and hard work saved enough food for the winter. One cold evening, a neighbor named Mr. Lewis came to their door. His crops had completely failed, and his family had nothing left to eat. Without hesitation, Thomas shared his stored grain and vegetables. Samuel was shocked. "Father, if we don't have it for ourselves." Thomas replied, "Food can be shared, but kindness grows when you give it away." That night, Samuel could not sleep. He thought about his father's words and actions. For the first time, he realized that strength was not only in muscles or money, but in character. The following spring, rain returned to the village. The fields became green again, and hope filled the air. Samuel worked harder than ever before, not because he was forced to, but because he understood the value of the land and his father's lessons. Anna began teaching the younger children in the village how to read and write using what her father had taught her about patience and care. Mark continued to follow his father, learning every skill with pride. Years later, Thomas grew older. His steps became slower, and his hands shook sometimes, but his children were ready. Samuel took responsibility for the farm. Anna became the village teacher, and Mark helped both the land and the people one evening. As the sun set over the fields, Thomas sat with his children and said, "A farmer does not only grow crops, a farmer grows people, values, and the future." The children understood then that their father had given them more than food and shelter. He had given them wisdom, strength, and love lessons that would last longer than any harvest and sow. The farmer father's legacy lived on, not only in the land he cared for, but in the hearts of his children and the village that respected him.